The alarm that echoed through the galactic archives wasn't your typical "oops, someone left their quantum coffee maker on" kind of alert. No, this was the sort of alarm that made even the most composed beings drop their tentacles in sheer panic. It started as a gentle hum in the crystalline data cores of the ZXLX archives, right between the sections labeled Failed Civilizations and Really Failed Civilizations. High Archivist Engsttal, all 7 of their sensory appendages twitching nervously, slithered toward the central console. The last time this particular alarm had sounded, 3 solar systems had spontaneously redecorated themselves into abstract art. Their assistant, Junior Archivist Viren, was already there, their bioluminescent spots flashing in what could only be described as the xenobiological equivalent of "oh crud." "Please tell me someone just tried to archive a black hole again," Nixatal chittered hopefully. "Worse," Viren's translator wheezed. "The awakening protocol has been initiated. Someone's trying to wake them." The emphasis on them wasn't lost on anyone in the massive archive chamber. Every species in the galaxy knew about them. Well, knew about Earth. It was the first lesson in Galactic History 101, how not to end up as a cautionary tale. Nixatal's outer membrane paled to a sickly shade of mauve. "Pull up the restricted files. Authorization code. Don't be dead. Don't be dead. Please, don't be dead." The holographic display erupted with warnings, each more dramatic than the last. Red text scrolled past faster than a quantum particle on caffeine, but one message stood out in particular. Warning, Earth status, dormant warrior civilization. Threat level, yes. Recommended action, don't. Who in their right minds would even consider? Nistal began, but was interrupted by an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Supreme Counselor Zzax, looking about as composed as a supernova in progress. "The awakening protocol wasn't an accident," Zzax announced, their voice modulator crackling with stress. "The Hive Mind Collective has voted to wake Earth's warriors." The archives erupted into chaos. 3 junior archivists spontaneously molted, something they weren't supposed to be capable of doing. A visiting researcher from the crystalline consciousness transformed into their base mineral form out of sheer shock. Someone in the background started humming what sounded suspiciously like a funeral dirge. "But the warnings," Nixatal protested. "Every dead civilization we've archived had the same message. Never wake Earth's warriors. It's literally carved into the ruins of the Proxima Centauri outpost in letters big enough to see from orbit." "The Council is aware," Zzax replied dryly. "We have an entire department dedicated to studying those warnings. The Department of Don't Do That, You Idiots, as it's officially known." Viren, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Has anyone actually read the fine print on why we shouldn't wake them?" The question hung in the air like a poorly configured gravity generator. Nixatal reluctantly accessed the deepest archives, where the real reasons were stored. As the data streamed across their consciousness, their color shifted through 7 different shades of terror before settling on a previously undiscovered 8th. "Oh," they said simply. "Oh no." The archive's AI helpfully chose that moment to start playing what it considered appropriate background music, an ancient Earth transmission it had archived under ominous historical documents. The song's title? Let the Bodies Hit the Floor. Nixatal found themselves doing something they'd sworn never to do, accessing the forbidden archives. Not the regular forbidden archives where they kept embarrassing galactic selfies and recipes for militant cheese. The really forbidden archives, secured behind more warning signs than a quantum physics comedy club. The historical records flickered to life, projecting a series of increasingly concerning images into the archive's main chamber. The first was a crayon drawing from the Zorblack civilization, dated just before their mysterious disappearance. It showed stick figures with what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons, facing off against the Zorblacks' most advanced battle cruisers. The Zorblacks had helpfully labeled this artwork. Mistake #1, they have these things called Marines. "Fascinating," muttered Professor Quaixon, the archive's leading xenoanthropologist, who had materialized from seemingly nowhere. Notice how the humans appear to be smiling while charging directly at plasma cannons. Classic example of what we call completely insane battle doctrine. The next record came from the Mechanoid Collective, notorious for their logical approach to everything. Their final transmission consisted of exactly 3 words: logic does not apply. Attached was a video showing humans using something called a toilet paper roll to clean their waste processing units. The mechanoids had apparently spent their final days trying to comprehend why a species capable of faster-than-light travel would choose such an inefficient cleaning method. They never figured it out. But surely their military capabilities couldn't have been that advanced, Viren protested, their bioluminescent spots forming what looked suspiciously like question marks. According to these specs, they were still using chemical propellants when they went dormant. Nix et al. Pulled up the classified assessment from the Galactic Military Council. That's what makes them so terrifying. Look at this report from the Arachnid Empire's last encounter. They describe humans as, and I quote, a species that will literally throw rocks really hard if they run out of ammunition and somehow make it work. The report went on to detail various human military innovations that had the entire archive staff questioning their sanity. Apparently, humans had once defeated an advanced alien probe network by throwing bags of metal chaff into orbit, essentially confusing billion-credit surveillance systems with what amounted to space glitter. Wait, Professor Kixon interrupted, pointing at a particularly disturbing cultural analysis. Are you telling me they invented something called breakdancing before they achieved faster-than-light travel? How does a species prioritize spinning on their heads over interstellar exploration? The archives hummed as they processed more data. Records showed that humans had a peculiar habit of naming their weapons after weather phenomena, mythological figures, and occasionally cute animals. The Galactic Military Council had spent decades trying to understand the psychological warfare implications of a devastating orbital strike platform named Fuzzy Bunny. Here's something interesting, Viren noted, pulling up a cultural database. They had this thing called action movies, where they would recreate battles that never happened, but with more explosions. They did this for entertainment. For entertainment? Nix et al.'s color shifted to the ultraviolet spectrum in shock. You mean they simulated war? For fun? It gets worse, Professor Kixon added, scanning through more records. They had these things called video games where they would simulate simulations of war. It's like they were running military training scenarios as a recreational activity. And something called Doom apparently prepared an entire generation for theoretical demon invasions. A collective shudder ran through the archive chamber. The implications were clear. They weren't just dealing with warriors. They were dealing with warriors who had turned combat into a form of entertainment, who had weaponized mathematics through something called trajectory calculations, and who considered charging directly at superior forces while screaming to be a valid tactical option. There's one more thing, Nix et al. Said, their voice dropping to a whisper. According to this, they had a saying, "Hold my beer and watch this." It appears to have preceded some of their most impressive and terrifying technological achievements. The archive staff stared at the data in horrified fascination. Somewhere in the background, the AI had started playing another archived Earth transmission. This one was labeled Highway to Hell. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council looked less like a dignified assembly of advanced civilizations and more like a cosmic cafeteria food fight waiting to happen. Representatives from 37 species crammed into the quantum-enhanced chamber, each trying to speak over the others, while maintaining what they hoped was a dignified appearance. Supreme Councillor Zuxax banged their ceremonial gravity hammer, which actually controlled the room's artificial gravity. 3 delegates accidentally floated to the ceiling before someone adjusted the settings. "Order! We will have order," Sachs demanded, though the effect was somewhat undermined by their own nervous tentacles typing out their last will and testament. The holographic display at the center of the chamber showed their current crisis in all its terrifying glory. The Devourers. Not the most original name for a threat to galactic civilization, but they hadn't exactly stopped to fill out the proper paperwork for species classification. These entities existed in subspace, consuming everything in their path, and turning orderly space-time into something that resembled abstract art painted by a quantum physicist having an existential crisis. As you can see, General Kextil of the Unified Defense Force explained, pointing at the display with 3 of their appendages, while stress-eating with the other 4, conventional weapons are about as effective as throwing compliments at a black hole. The Devourers have already consumed the Epsilon sector, including our newest quantum mole. Do you know how much paperwork is involved in writing off a quantum mole? A representative from the bureaucratic collective actually fainted at the mention of the paperwork. "We've tried everything," continued Admiral Yixvon, their crystalline form clouding with anxiety. "We sent our most advanced AI systems against them. They came back writing poetry about the futility of existence. We deployed our quantum weaponry. They ate it and asked for seconds. We even tried filing a strongly worded complaint with the universe itself." "And that's why," Zigzag said, their voice modulator struggling to maintain a steady tone, "the Hive Mind Collective has proposed waking Earth." The chamber erupted into chaos again. The representative from the Silicon Federation began stress-compiling random code. The energetic plasma beings started stress-fusing. Someone in the back started humming "Another One Bites the Dust," having clearly spent too much time studying Earth's historical records. "But the forms," wailed Representative Bexeleur of the bureaucratic collective, who had recovered just in time to have another panic attack. "The paperwork for waking a dormant warrior civilization requires at least 17 different permits, including Form X-742, Acknowledgement of Probable Doom, and Form Z-899, Waiver of Right to Complain when it all goes horribly wrong. I think the Devourer's eating reality takes precedence over proper form filing," Zigzags pointed out, immediately causing several bureaucrats to clutch their documentation in horror. The Council's risk assessment AI chose that moment to chime in with its analysis. Probability of survival without Earth's warriors, 0.0000001%. Probability of survival with Earth's warriors. Unknown. Calculator exploded when attempting calculation. Unknown is better than virtually 0, General Kextil argued, still stress-eating. Besides, humans can't possibly be worse than entropy-based entities that treat space-time like an all-you-can-eat buffet. "Very well," Zigzags declared, trying to sound authoritative while their tentacles were still finishing their will. "We shall put it to a vote. All in favor of waking Earth's warriors and potentially trading one apocalypse for another, raise your appendage, pseudopod, or quantum probability field." The vote was unanimous, if only because the alternative was filling out the paperwork for universal obliteration. As the Council dispersed to prepare for humanity's awakening, the risk assessment AI started playing what it calculated to be appropriate background music, the final countdown. Representative Bixeleur was last seen muttering about starting a new subcommittee, the Department of What Have We Done, before implementing the catastrophically terrible but technically necessary decision to wake Earth. The Galactic Council insisted on documenting their final attempts to handle the crisis without human intervention, mostly for insurance purposes. First came the quantum peacekeepers, who attempted to reason with the Devourers through advanced mathematical proofs demonstrating why they shouldn't exist. The Devourers responded by eating the proofs and sending back a solution to P=sign NP scrawled on what appeared to be the remnants of space-time itself. The quantum peacekeepers spent 3 days trying to verify the proof before realizing it was actually a recipe for cosmic spaghetti. Next, the mechanical Concordat deployed their most advanced battle fleet, ships the size of small moons equipped with weapons that could rearrange solar systems. The Devourers treated it like a breakfast buffet. The after-action report consisted of a single line. They said yum. Even the psychic collective's attempt to communicate telepathically resulted in nothing but cosmic indigestion and a weird craving for dimensional physics. Their lead telepath emerged from the attempt speaking in programming languages and trying to divide by 0. "Well," announced Supreme Councillor Zigzags to the assembled emergency committee, "I believe that concludes our try everything else first protocol. Time for the oh no, oh no, oh no protocol." The preparation procedures for waking Earth were contained in a manual thicker than most small planetary cores. The first chapter was simply titled, "Are you sure? Like, really sure? Last chance to change your mind." General Xtil, now surrounded by a mountain of stress-eaten snack wrappers, began reading from the manual. Step 1, accept your mortality. Step 2, update your will. Step 3, actually wake the humans. The rest of the pages just repeat good luck in increasingly nervous fonts. The actual awakening process required a level of bureaucratic approval that made quantum mechanics look straightforward. Forms had to be filled out in triplicate, sent to 7 different departments, lost in 5 of them, found in 3, and approved by beings who technically didn't exist. "Has everyone signed Form WE 817, acknowledgement that this might be a terrible idea, but we're doing it anyway?" asked Representative Bexeleur, who had developed a nervous tic that caused them to spontaneously generate paperwork. The preparation team had been chosen through a rigorous selection process involving several rounds of panic attacks and 1 game of quantum rock, paper, scissors. They now stood before the control panel that would initiate the awakening sequence, each wearing the official uniform of the Wake Earth Task Force, complete with "It was nice knowing you" badges. "Remember," Zigzags addressed the team, "according to the manual, human warriors respond best to something called coffee and direct approaches. We've synthesized an entire solar system's worth of this coffee substance, though we're still not sure if it's a weapon or a fuel source." The final checklist was completed. The quantum generators hummed. The backup generators backed up. The backup generators stood by nervously. As the awakening sequence initiated, someone in the control room started playing ancient Earth music labeled "The Greatest Hits of Heavy Metal," apparently misunderstanding it as a technical manual for metallurgy. The last words recorded in the official log before the sequence completed came from Junior Archivist Viren. "At least if this goes wrong, I won't have to finish cataloguing the archive's collection of quantum cat memes." The first contact team had prepared for every conceivable scenario, which turned out to be completely useless since humans specialized in the inconceivable. They had assembled the galaxy's finest diplomats, equipped them with universal translators, and dressed them in what their historical research suggested was formal Earth attire, which explained why the entire delegation was wearing mixed patterns of plaid and something called a fanny pack. The chosen spokesperson, Ambassador Araxatil, had spent months practicing human greetings. They had perfected the art of what Earth records called a high five, though they remained confused about why it was called high when humans typically performed it at mid-height. The first transmission to the awakening humans was carefully crafted over 17 committee meetings, 4 diplomatic summits, and 1 particularly heated game of charades. It read, "Greetings, noble warriors of Earth. We come in peace and desperate need of your help. Please don't shoot." The human response was immediate and deeply confusing. "LOL, nice special effects. Is this for that new streaming series?" Ambassador Araxatil consulted their human response manual, but found nothing under LOL except a note saying, "May indicate either imminent death or extreme amusement. Context required." The manual was immediately filed under less than helpful. The second attempt at communication involved a formal holographic presentation detailing the Devourer threat. The humans interrupted halfway through to ask if they could get the TLDR version, another phrase that sent the diplomatic corps into a research frenzy. "Perhaps," suggested Deputy Ambassador Yixlon, "we should try their military channels." This proved somewhat more successful, though the first human military response, "Who's pranking the NORAD comm system again?" wasn't quite what they'd hoped for. It took 3 more attempts, 2 virtual demonstrations of the Devourers eating reality, and 1 accidentally transmitted video of the first contact team practicing human dance moves to convince Earth this wasn't an elaborate joke. The real chaos began during the first face-to-face meeting. The diplomatic team had prepared a formal greeting ceremony, complete with quantum-enhanced visual aids and a solemnly written speech about galactic unity. The human representatives showed up in what they called casual Friday attire, immediately asked where they could get coffee, and somehow convinced the ship's AI to play something called disco music. "You're telling me," said the human military attaché, sipping their 7th cup of coffee, "that you woke us up because space-time is being eaten by interdimensional cosmic horror entities, and you need us to shoot them?" "Technically," Ambassador Ruxatil clarified, "we need your expertise in making things that shouldn't explode. Cool, nodded the human representative. "Quick question, though. Has anyone tried hitting them really hard with something heavy?" The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of several alien diplomats updating their wills. Cultural misunderstandings multiplied faster than quantum probability waves. The humans insisted on naming their battle strategies after Earth board games, leading to extreme confusion when Operation Hungry Hippos turned out to be a legitimate military proposal. They kept making references to something called Independence Day and seemed disappointed when no one understood why they were quoting it. The final straw came during the strategic planning session when a human general casually mentioned giving the Devourers a taste of their own medicine, causing 3 different translation AIs to have existential crises, trying to understand how one would medicate entities that ate reality itself. As the meeting devolved into chaos, with humans suggesting increasingly impossible-sounding battle plans, and aliens trying to understand why these plans were being accompanied by finger guns and explosion sounds, the risk assessment AI updated its survival probability calculations. The new result simply read, "TSU, but this should be interesting." The human solution to fighting reality-devouring cosmic entities turned out to be exactly what the aliens had feared: completely, utterly, and terrifyingly human. It began with a question that made the entire Galactic Military Council question their decision to wake Earth. "So," said the human general, drawing on a holographic display with what appeared to be a laser pointer shaped like a cat, "these Devourers eat anything in their path, right? Including energy weapons, matter, and space-time itself?" "Correct," confirmed Admiral Yixavon, wondering why the human was grinning like someone who had just invented a better way to blow things up. "And they convert everything they consume into more void space, basically making themselves bigger." "Also correct." "Perfect," the general announced. "We're going to give them indigestion." What followed was a plan so audacious that it caused 3 different species to evolve on the spot just to have the proper organs to express their disbelief. The humans proposed combining the galaxy's most advanced quantum technology with what they called the principle of eating too many hot wings, essentially weaponizing cosmic indigestion. The first phase involved modifying quantum generators to produce what the humans called spicy space, a concept that shouldn't have worked according to 17 different laws of physics. Yet somehow, when they coupled it with Earth's primitive but remarkably effective propulsion systems, it created what one human scientist gleefully termed the universe's biggest case of heartburn. General Kixtil, watching the humans work, had to be periodically reminded to close all 7 of their mouths. The humans were taking billion-credit quantum manipulators and treating them like what they called garage workshop projects, complete with the liberal application of something they insisted was called duct tape. But that's a precision instrument capable of restructuring reality, protested Chief Engineer Zixavak, as a human technician attached what appeared to be a soft drink can to it. "Yeah," the technician replied, "and now it's a precision instrument capable of restructuring reality with a caffeine boost." The Devourers encountered the first modified quantum field and did exactly what they always did. They ate it. The results were immediate and spectacular. The void space began hiccuping, something that should have been impossible for a non-corporeal entity that technically didn't exist in normal space-time. "Did you just give an entropy-based cosmic horror the equivalent of atomic acid reflux?" asked Ambassador Ruxatil, watching the Devourers writhe in what appeared to be multi-dimensional discomfort. Nah, replied the human engineer, tapping away at a control panel they'd modified with what looked suspiciously like gaming console parts. This is just the appetizer. The main course, as the humans called it, involved something they termed quantum feedback loops, but what was essentially cosmic-scale revenge for all the times humanity had eaten something they shouldn't have. They somehow managed to combine the Galactic Council's most advanced technology with principles derived from competitive eating contests. The alien observers watched in horrified fascination as humans integrated their military tactics with advanced alien tech in ways that could charitably be described as creative, and more accurately as, why is that working that shouldn't be working? How is that working? They're using a quantum uncertainty manipulator as a what? Squeaked Representative Bexeleur. Space catapult, replied the human commander casually. If you adjust the uncertainty principle just right, you can basically yeet anything across the galaxy. Yeet? The universal translator sparked slightly and displayed an error message that just read, Chew. The culmination of the human battle plan involved what they called Operation Food Coma, essentially overfeeding the devourers until they entered a state of cosmic torpor. They achieved this by launching what one human described as the galaxy's biggest all-you-can-eat buffet, but everything gives you the runs. To the astonishment of the Galactic Council, it worked. The devourers, after consuming several solar systems worth of weaponized space-time, began showing signs of what the humans confidently diagnosed as the meat sweats, but on a universal scale. As the threat slowly receded, consuming itself in what appeared to be multidimensional indigestion, Admiral Yixavon turned to the human commander. How did you know this would work? The commander shrugged. Ever eaten so much you hate yourself? Same principle, just with higher stakes and better special effects. The risk assessment AI, which had been quietly documenting everything, finally gave up and started playing what it deemed appropriate background music. Another one bites the dust. For once, it was literally accurate. In the aftermath of what humans had already dubbed the Great Cosmic Indigestion, the Galactic Council found themselves facing an uncomfortable revelation. The ancient warnings about never waking Earth's warriors hadn't been because humans were ruthless destroyers of civilizations. They were warnings about humanity's tendency to solve problems in ways that made the universe question its own sanity. High Archivist Nick Sital, reviewing the battle footage for the official records, kept having to pause the playback to process what they were seeing. They defeated entropy-based cosmic horrors by essentially giving them a stomachache. To be fair, Professor Quaexon noted, it was a really bad stomachache. The post-crisis analysis meeting was unlike any in galactic history. The conference room was littered with empty coffee cups. The humans had gotten half the galaxy addicted to the substance. Takeout containers from something called pizza, which 3 species had already declared their new religion, and countless sketches of increasingly improbable weapons drawn on napkins. So, Supreme Councillor Zixax addressed the assembly, their tentacles only slightly trembling now. We've learned several important things. First, the ancient warnings about Earth's warriors were perhaps misinterpreted. The actual warning, Ninixtal added, pulling up the newly deciphered text, translates more accurately to, "Don't wake the humans. They'll solve your problems, but you won't like how they do it." The humans present at the meeting seemed to take this as a compliment. They were already discussing ways to weaponize other common inconveniences, including something they called Monday mornings, which they assured everyone was more terrifying than any cosmic horror. Representative Bixeleur, who had finally stopped spontaneously generating paperwork, raised a pseudopod. Should we be concerned that they've already submitted 17 patent applications for, and I quote, quantum-enhanced practical jokes? The answer came in the form of a demonstration, as someone activated what the humans called a quantum whoopee cushion, causing an entire sector of space to make an embarrassing noise. 3 different species immediately filed to classify it as a weapon of mass destruction. Perhaps, mused Admiral Yixvon, Our ancestors weren't warning us about human aggression, but about their ability to turn literally anything into a solution, weapon, or practical joke, often all three simultaneously. The final report to the Galactic Council contained a new classification for humanity. They were no longer listed under dangerous warrior species, do not wake, but instead under creative problem solvers, wake only in emergencies, and only if you're prepared for the solution to be weird. As the galaxy settled back into its normal rhythm, now slightly more chaotic thanks to human influence, the archives received a new set of warnings to catalogue. These weren't about the dangers of waking Earth's warriors, but rather about the dangers of asking humans, "Hey, watch this!" or the phrase, "I bet you can't." The risk assessment, AI, having finally recovered from trying to calculate human probability factors, added its own warning to the archives. Caution. Humans don't just think outside the box. They take the box apart, rebuild it into something else, and then use it to solve problems in ways that make the laws of physics cry. In the end, the ancient warnings remained, but with a crucial update. Beneath "Never wake Earth's warriors," someone had added in smaller text, "Unless you have a problem that needs solving, and don't care how weird the solution gets." The universe wisely decided to take this advice seriously.